Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It has been a minute since I've filmed. Actually, it's been over a month since my last vlog. And as you can tell, I am no longer pregnant. Baby girl arrived 2 weeks ago yesterday. She was born July 16th at 7:45 p.m. And so I've been taking the last couple weeks to just adjust to being a new mom. And so now that I am back, today's video is going to be kind of a day in the life slash my birth story. I'm actually going to be driving for the first time today, so I'm just trying to get ready to get out of the house and get baby girl out of the house. And so I figured I would tell you my story while bringing you along with me. So we will just jump right in, and I will show you little miss before the end of this vlog. She is kind of in a half awake, half asleep state currently in her bouncer, so I will show her before I end this video. But anyways, let's start straight from the beginning. It was July 15th at 3 o'clock in the morning. I woke up with what I thought were contractions. I was over a week overdue, 1 week overdue. So I was 41 weeks and 3 days when I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and thought I was having contractions, but I had one other bout of like what I thought was real contractions, and they lasted for 3 hours at 40 weeks and 4 days, and then they stopped after 3 hours. So I kind of just wasn't getting my hopes up and figured, oh, that's probably just what's going on again. And so they were bad enough that they kept me awake, but they were more just uncomfortable than really painful. And for me, they started and were mostly in my back. Actually, throughout my entire labor, I had really bad back labor, but I'll share more about that. So 3 o'clock in the morning, contractions started, and I stayed in bed awake. I couldn't fall back asleep until Corey's alarm clock went off for work at 5:30. And at that point, they had gone from being between every 15 and 20 minutes to being between every 11 and 12 minutes. They were definitely more consistent. They were definitely a little stronger, but still not painful, just like really uncomfortable. And so I was texting with a friend of mine who was already awake because she also was very pregnant, 2 weeks behind me. And so she had mentioned like, hey, see if you get in the shower, move around, see if they go away. If they don't, then it's probably the real thing. So that's exactly what I did. I got up after Corey's alarm clock went off, and I told him, hey, like, I think this is the real deal this time, so you probably don't want to go into work because he works an hour away, and things could either go really quick or really slow, and I didn't want him to be an hour away and have to drive back, or to get to work and then have to turn around and just drive straight back home. So he called out of work. I got up, I got in the shower, and the contractions intensified and started to become a little painful. Still not anything that I couldn't manage, but they definitely started to become painful versus just uncomfortable. And they actually sped up to about every 10 minutes, 10 to 11 minutes versus 11 to 12. And so after I got out of the shower, I kind of just hung around here at the house. I feel like I have dog hair up my nose. But I just kind of hung around here at the house. I was talking to one of my friends on the phone for a few hours. I walked around downstairs, did some laboring on the birthing ball, just pretty much everything I could think of that might help me progress and also like help with managing the pain as well. And so that went on for hours upon hours. And then sometime in the evening, I don't remember exactly what time it was, my sister showed up here I didn't know she was actually going to be coming over here, but she got here because she was going to be staying with the dogs once I went into labor, and it was pouring down rain, so she figured she might as well just, sorry, I have the hiccups. She might as well just come on over here in case I went to the hospital that night, which she was pretty sure I would. That way somebody would already be here with the dogs. And so I guess it was probably around 5 or 6 by the time she got here. And at that point, when I would have contractions, I couldn't talk through them. I just needed everybody to be quiet and just let me focus on getting through the contractions. They were about every 7 or 8 minutes apart. My contractions were never perfectly consistent. I would have 3 or 4 in a row that would be like sometime in the 7-minute range, and then I might have one that was 12 minutes, and then I might have one that was 5 minutes. And they did that even as I progressed, like even when I was having around 5 minutes, or the average time on my contraction timer said the average was 5 minutes and some odd seconds. But I would have like 5 or 6 that would be 5 minutes, and then I'd have one that would be 6 or 7, and then one that would be 3.5 or 4. So at that point, they were at 7 minutes. My sister was over here. I stayed downstairs for maybe about an hour after she got here. And then the contractions were just getting more and more intense, especially in my back and in my right hip. My right hip was absolutely killing me. And so I decided that I was going to go upstairs and get in the shower because the hot water was helping with my pain. And so my husband came upstairs and helped me in the shower and everything. And I stayed in there for maybe 15, 20 minutes, got out of the shower and laid down in the bed. He got me a heating pad to help with the pain in my back. And then my friend told me to use an ice pack on my stomach to help with the front contractions, even though my contractions in the front were nothing compared to the ones in my back. But we wrapped that up in a towel and used that as well to help with some of the pain. And I labored here in the house and in my room until probably around 8 or so. And then talking to my doula, we decided for her to come on to the house. And it might have been closer to 9. And she got here probably around 10 o'clock. And after seeing me and seeing that my contractions were averaging around 5 minutes apiece, she did recommend that we start getting ready to go to the hospital. So we put Miss Heidi Nan up and let me get ready to leave. And then Corey let Heidi out so she could stay out in our room while we were gone. And we got everything, that we still had left to put in the car. Corey got everything put in the car. And we got in the car about 10:30 and headed to the hospital. We got there right around 11. Let me just tell you, it is no joke riding in the car when you're having contractions. At first, my contractions seemed to space out when I got in the car. That lasted for 15 minutes, maybe, out of the 45 to an hour drive. Then they ramped up and they were more painful. And every time my husband hit a bump or every time he accelerated on the gas, it was awful. My doula called the hospital and told them that we were on our way, and they told us who was the doctor on call. Thankfully, it wasn't the doctor that I did not like, but it also wasn't one of my 2 favorites either. It was the one that I actually hadn't seen much at all. And so we got to the hospital at 11:30. At that point, I felt like I couldn't even walk, so they rolled me in a wheelchair and took us straight up to labor and delivery, and we went into the triage department. And let me just say, it was my goal, if I could have chosen when to go to the hospital, and known how far dilated I would be, it was my goal to be at least 5 centimeters, preferably 6 centimeters dilated. Well, they checked me in and they assessed me and got all of my information. They wanted to put in an IV, which I declined because I was planning to do an all-natural labor and delivery. I am terrified of needles. Also, the one IV I've ever had in my arm was so incredibly painful that I just didn't want something even more uncomfortable on top of contraction and labor pains already. So at that point, I declined the IV, and they checked to see how dilated I was, and I was so ecstatic to hear that I was 5.5 centimeters dilated. I was over halfway there. I felt so good about that. They did say that not both my doula and my husband could stay with me in triage. And so since my doula was using essential oils to help with me being nauseous and also counter pressure to help with my pain with my back and my hip, my husband went and sat in the waiting room while they got everything ready, and then he joined us when they transferred me up to a labor and delivery room. Let me put on my lip liner and I'll continue. So I'm not sure what time they transferred me up to labor and delivery, other than it was definitely after midnight. And so we got set up. I was in excruciating pain by the time we got up to labor and delivery. I thought I would be walking around while I was in labor. No, I couldn't move out of the bed. Like, my contractions were not your typical contractions. So once I hit probably about 6.5 centimeters, so probably about 24 hours after the very beginning of my early labor started, my contractions would, instead of lasting like a minute and a half, to 2 minutes, and then you get like a minute or 2 minute break, and then you have another one. My contractions were lasting sometimes 3 or 4 minutes, and I would have 10 seconds in between one contraction and the next. So mine were really on top of each other without me entering transition yet, which was the hardest part. By the time I got to 8 centimeters at about 4:30 in the morning, I was in excruciating pain, mostly in my back and hips. I couldn't move. At that point, I couldn't breathe through the pain. I had been up 26 hours at that point. And I started thinking, I'm at 8. I'm hopefully going to be at 10 soon enough and need to push. I need rest, or I am not going to have the energy to be able to push this baby out. And that is when I looked at my husband and said that I wanted an epidural. He did question this because he was like, you told me no matter what you said not to let you get an epidural because of your bad back. And at that point, I looked at him and I said, on Heidi Nan's life, I want the epidural. So he knew I was pretty serious at that point, and he was of course going to do whatever I wanted done. Our biggest concern was the fact that I do have a bad back, of could it cause long-term pain. But at that point, I was to the point of whatever is meant to happen is going to happen. Whatever God's plan was is what's going to happen. I relied a lot on my faith and on prayer throughout my entire labor, and really my entire pregnancy, but especially throughout my labor experience. When those contractions were coming on top of each other and I couldn't even speak for a couple hours at a time, I just would pray silently. I might get 1 or 2 words like actually out when I had 10 seconds between contractions, but for the most part, I just prayed silently to get through the pain, through the contractions, and get our little girl brought into the world. So without me rambling, about 4:30, they called the nurse and said, hey, like, she does want the epidural, come in here, do the IV. I knew once I got the IV that it would take about an hour for me to get fluids in me before they could do the actual epidural. And so I told the nurse, I said, I'm terrified of IVs because I had a horrible experience when I was in Florida. Back when I was first pregnant, and so she was really great. It didn't hurt really at all when she did the IV, so I'm very thankful for that. So I was very thankful that she did so great with my IV. And when she got that in, about 45 minutes later, no, not even 45 minutes, maybe about 30 minutes later, she came back in the room and was like, hey, I'm going to start getting you set up for your epidural. They should be here just shortly. And so that was incredibly painful, me trying to sit up. She did tell Corey that they are not allowed to have but one person in the room while I'm getting the epidural. So once again, since our doula was the professional in helping me with my pain, he said, when they came in there, he would step outside while they did the epidural. And at that point, she told me it would probably be 20 or so minutes before they got in there to do the epidural. Then she got, I don't know if it's call page whatever, I don't remember exactly. And they were actually already on the floor, so she had to get me like set up pretty quickly, which I'm not gonna complain about. It was painful, but that epidural, once he got in there and he got it going, that pain went away so quickly. I had a great anesthesiologist. He came in and he explained everything perfectly. I was terrified of a needle going in my back. He did not show me what the needle looked like because I did not want to see it. I was just really scared all the way around about the entire situation. The worst part of pain of getting the epidural for me was having to bend over, because your back has to make a C shape. So having to bend over through contractions was extremely painful for me. And hold on, let me get baby girl settled real quick and we'll be back. So like I was saying, being bent over in the C was like the most painful part of getting an epidural for me. It didn't take long for him to do it. I think the entire process from the time he came in there till he left was maybe 15-20 minutes. And by the time he left the room, I was already starting to go numb. Once I got that epidural, it was a game changer. I didn't fall asleep right away, but I was able to lay back and relax. I told my husband to get some sleep, told our doula, hey, try to get some rest. Of course, she got up every time a nurse came in because she was doing her job, but I was encouraging them to try and get some rest while I tried to rest. And so that was around 5:30 to 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I'm trying to remember everything because things kind of go a little blurry after that. Not long after the epidural, I do know they had warned me about signs of like if blood pressure is bottoming out or anything like that. I started to feel nauseous. I told my doula, she went and grabbed a nurse. They came in there, my blood pressure had dropped, which I don't have high blood pressure anyways. My blood pressure is actually relatively on the low end of normal, even during my contractions. That was not really elevated, it was very normal. And so she went and got the nurse. They came in there. Baby girl's heart rate had dropped just from my blood pressure dropping. They put some medications in my IV, got my blood pressure back up, got baby girl's heart rate back up. At that point, I asked them where they have the monitor for her heart and you can hear the beat. Like I asked them to turn that up so that I could actually hear it, because her heart rate dropping even just for those few minutes definitely made mama nervous. And I was afraid, like, did I make the right decision? Did I do the right thing? Like, I know God's got this, but like, did I do the right thing? And just all the thoughts that you get. And my camera battery died. I thought it was fully charged. But what I was saying was, I started going through, all the thoughts you get as a mom about, am I doing the right thing? Am I putting myself before my baby? Mom guilt starts, I swear, before you even have the baby in your arms. And so, at that point, they got her heart rate up. I was able to listen to it, and it only dropped one other time, and that was just for a second, and they believe it was she just didn't like the position that they put me in. So as soon as it dropped, they had me change positions. After I got the epidural, my labor stalled. So I had made it to 8 centimeters, maybe 8.5. I thought for a long time that they said it was 9, but it was actually between like 8, 8.5. And it completely stalled for like almost 10 hours. They did suggest, my doctor came in there and suggested, even though I was so against inductions and Pitocin, given the circumstances, given how far I had made it, she wanted to do Pitocin. So they started me on a low dose of Pitocin, and I did eventually progress to what she called 9 centimeters. At that point, the nurse came in there and she asked me, she was like, did your water break? And I was like, no, like, what are you talking about? And she was like, yeah, your water broke. Your epidural is just so good, you couldn't feel it. So they said that my water broke at that time. I don't know exactly what time that was. I just know a little while later, she came back in and took out my catheter or moved it or something and was like, you know what? You actually have a second water bag. So that was something she said was actually pretty rare and unique. So she called the doctor in there, doctor checked, doctor was like, yeah, she definitely has a second water bag. So she broke the second water bag. They hoped that would help me finish progressing to 10. but I was still stalled in labor and it was not working. At that point, they were getting concerned because I had already been in labor for about 36 hours. And with my family history, they let my mom labor too long with me. Her labor stalled out and her uterus ruptured, and she had to have an emergency C-section and later an emergency hysterectomy because her uterus ruptured twice and she lost all of her blood and platelets. So the doctors were definitely concerned since my labor had been stalled for so long. They did mention a C-section, which I became hysterical crying over because that was not something I prepared for. In my mind, that was not something that was an option with our lifestyle of my bedroom's on the second floor. We don't really have a ton of help around here. My sister had to go home to Texas after I got home. We didn't know what we would do. My husband had to go back to work after 5 days. So if I had a C-section, being on my own after 5 days with a newborn, a flight of stairs in order to get downstairs, 8 dogs, 1 puppy, and 2 cats seemed like an impossible thing. So I was definitely very upset over this. My doctor was trying to reassure me, like, we haven't gotten to that route yet. Like, there's one thing we can try, which was not what you want to hear, that there's only one thing we can try, but that was increasing my Pitocin and heavily monitoring baby and I. What is it? Did you spit out your passy? So that option was to, like I said, heavily monitor baby's heart rate and my heart rate and try increasing Pitocin. They also inserted an internal contraction monitor to see how strong my contractions were. And thankfully, it wasn't a couple hours after they started doing this and after increasing Pitocin a good bit that my doctor came back in, and I expected her to check me and be like, oh, you're still not, I was thinking worst case scenario at that point, and I was thinking she's going to be like, oh, you're still not dilating, we're moving on to a C-section. I was terrified when she came in and was not expecting her to check me and say, okay, you're complete, so let's start pushing. That was crazy when she said that. I was mind blown. I started crying because I just thought that my chances of having a vaginal delivery were getting slimmer and further in between. And that is just not something that I wanted, to have a C-section, which I'm sure most women don't want that, especially when they had planned a vaginal delivery. So at that point, the nurses started helping me do practice pushes, and of course I had an epidural, so I couldn't really feel anything. So I wasn't sure what I was doing, if I was doing it right. My doula put on my labor playlist for me to help me relax, which was actually a playlist that my friend who was also having a baby had put together with all gospel music, and so that is what I pushed to. And actually my phone died right before I pushed her out. So we had that for the majority of the pushing, and you're about to hear the bouncer start playing music because baby girl's getting fussy, and that's what's gonna settle her. Okay, so I pushed for 3 hours before the doctor came back in there, and she was like, well, we've been pushing for a while, so you either have to get that baby out or we're going to have to move on to a C-section. And of course, I was not having it. I was not happy. I looked straight at her and said, H-E double hockey stick, no, we are not doing that. And my husband said I was so determined. He said 2 sets of 3 pushes. And he said baby's head was out. He said you were determined, you were not having a C-section. She is starting to get fussy, so I am going to have to hurry up with curling my hair because I can't hold her and curl it. But anyway, so ended up being right at 3.5 hours of pushing. And baby girl was officially here. She was born, like I said, July 16th, 7:45 p.m., weighing 7 pounds, 8 ounces, 19.5 inches long. And that is how we welcomed our amazing Randy Kate. We were so excited to welcome her. I definitely did not get the entire birth experience I wanted, but I feel very good about the decisions that I made and about the experience I had. I don't have any regrets over my experience, and I got to do skin to skin with her right away, and that was the most beautiful thing I have ever done in my life. And I'm gonna take a break and deal with her for a few minutes, and then I'll get back to talk to you more. So little miss is getting hungry, so we are about to eat. But this is Miss Randy Kate Loggins. I'm a little fussy and grumpy because I'm hungry, so Mama's gonna go feed me, and then we'll continue with our day. Here she is. Our perfect little girl, 2 weeks old, Miss Randy Kate. Miss Randy Kate. Okay, so I went ahead and got baby girl changed and fed so that I could throw on my clothes and we could get out of the house, because otherwise we never would get out of the house, actually. And my groceries were supposed to be ready between 3 o'clock and 4, and it's already 3:30, and I have not even gotten to the store yet, so it's going to be a little after my pickup time when I pick up, which is fine, but I just want to get them picked up so that I can in turn get home, because baby girl goes to bed, you know, pretty early. We start her bedtime routine at 7, really 6:45 to 7, depending on if she's showing signs of being sleepy. She usually wakes up about 6 and is up until we put her to bed around 7:30, 7:45-ish. That seems to be what works so far for her. I will say, yesterday we went to the chiropractor, and she is misaligned from where she was born. I didn't even mention this. The reason I was having such bad back and hip labor was because she was born facial. So when she was born, she was face up instead of face down, and so that did cause some misalignments with her neck, which it's not a big deal because I was going to take her to the chiropractor anyways. I go to the chiropractor, so they're going to get her all adjusted. And no, chiropractic care for infants is not the same as it is for us as adults. There's no cracking, there's no popping, there's no pain. She had her first adjustment yesterday, and she actually slept right through it. And then they told us, you know, you'll probably notice that she'll be a little sleepier after this appointment. That usually after any adjustments, that's the number one thing they notice with infants, is that they sleep more and they poop more. So, which I sleep more after I get adjusted, and I got adjusted yesterday as well, but I'll talk about that in my postpartum video, which will be my next video out, because I feel like that deserves its own video separate from birth and catch up. So with that being said, she slept really, really good last night. Last night's actually the most sleep I have gotten since I gave birth 2 weeks ago. So that was absolutely wonderful. And I realize I am saying so a lot. I feel like I am out of practice with filming because it has been over a month. I think it's been right at 5 or 6 weeks since my last video. I was, I think, 37-ish weeks pregnant in my last video. Lots to catch up on since then, obviously, but we are headed to the grocery store. Like I said, this is my first time driving since having baby girl, and I just want to keep it kind of light. Just one quick errand, first time out of the house with her by myself. Tomorrow she goes back to the chiropractor for her second adjustment. She goes twice a week for 2 weeks, so this week and next week, and then once a week for 10 weeks, and then twice a month until she is a year old. I believe I covered most of my birth experience. It was originally my plan, like leading up to labor. I wanted to vlog my entire labor and delivery experience. But once I was actually in labor, as much as I would love to have done that, I just was not mentally in a place where I could focus on filming. I just wanted to peacefully, or as peacefully as possible, get through my birth experience, and I'm glad that I did that. I don't have any regrets about doing it that way. I do have pictures. My doula did take pictures of baby girl being born. I'm not going to insert any graphic ones, but I will insert photos here of her birth, of her dad and I holding her for the first time, and things like that. Any photos that she got that were not graphic. She only took one video, which was of my husband cutting the cord, and it is a little bit of a graphic video, so I am not going to share that one. We will just keep that one for us personally. But with that being said, bless you. So in love with her. But with that being said, I am going to get to the store and get the groceries that I ordered and come back home and continue with our typical routine that we've gotten into for the evenings now. I hope to get active again here on YouTube over the coming weeks. I really am trying to give myself 4 weeks to just focus on recovery. that first week didn't leave the bed other than for doctor's appointments, and like I said, I'll talk about that with my whole postpartum experience. But I am trying my best to focus on recovering and not pushing myself too much. That's hard because I feel fine and am just kind of ready to get back to normal, but I know we will only ever have this time in our life one time. We will only ever have a newborn that is our firstborn one time. This is the only time we'll have a newborn experience with only one child in the house. So I am really trying to just soak up every single moment, but I cannot wait to share with you all of our journey. Like I said, the next video, I've said this like 3 times now, will be about my postpartum recovery. I want to get through 3 weeks postpartum probably before I'll film that. I do film mostly, like, I know I'm not physically recovered because like stitches are still healing and things like that, but for how I feel physically recovered. It's mostly a mental game, so I will talk about that more in that video. And there'll be definitely more videos that are just a day in the life with newborn and our routines. I would love to film a video that's like my nighttime routine with a newborn once I get this down a little bit more, maybe when she's still a newborn at 4 weeks, but before she's out of the newborn stage at 8-9 weeks. We also have a trip to Disney World coming up. Baby girl will be going on her first Walt Disney World vacation when she is about 10 weeks old, give or take a few days. So that will be a very fun experience for all of us. I am super excited personally to get back to Disney. I know my husband has missed Disney. I am excited to take our little girl for her first trip, and I'm just going with very low expectations of what all we're going to get done on this trip. Pretty much I am focusing on like 1 or 2 rides that are kid friendly at each park, And my biggest thing is getting a picture, like a main picture with her at each of the parks. So like one in front of the castle, one in front of the Tree of Life, things like that. Walking down Main Street and eating myself a Mickey Mouse ice cream bar, that is a focus point for me. Just very mellow, chilled out trip compared to our normal go, 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 like they're from rope drop until after closing that we normally do. So we'll see how that goes. And like I said, I'm going to get to the store. It has been so great catching up and sharing this experience. Hopefully I did a good job of sharing my birth experience, because my memory is a little bit fuzzy. And maybe I'll film another clip and put this in here, so you'll see if it gets done, of Corey talking about like how it was from his perspective, the birth experience. Not quite sure yet if that is something that I'll do. I haven't talked to him about it, but I will ask him if that is something like he would be interested in sitting down and like talking with me about, because I'm sure he has a different perspective of it, seeing me go through it and looking in from the outside versus my perspective as the person giving birth. He was really great throughout the entire experience. He was holding my leg while I was pushing and just doing everything he could to support me, as well as my doula supporting me. And so that all went really, really well, but maybe that's something I'll add in. Anyways, I am starting to ramble because, like I said, I feel out of practice and this feels very foreign to me. But we will catch up in the next video. I am going to try and share, I always say this, more over on Instagram. I'm terrible with staying caught up on Instagram. I'm better with filming videos than I am doing like stories and posts. But you can head over to my Instagram and follow me there. It's RebeccaLynn_GA. And if you haven't already, I would love if you would like and subscribe to my channel so that you can become part of my YouTube family. Leave me a comment down below if you have any questions about childbirth as a first-time mom, or if you want me to elaborate any more on anything I mentioned in this video, anything you think that I might have forgotten to mention. Just leave me a comment and I will do my best to get back to you as soon as I can, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.